Hey guys, it's me, Jacob Shireman, your Houston Realtor with J&M Realty Group. And today I wanted to take time to talk about moving to Houston. So many people over the last few years since the pandemic have been rushing to Texas and all areas, especially Houston. And we've seen a growth of about 3.5% over the last 2 years. And so I wanted to talk to you today about things you need to know before you make that commitment to move to Houston, especially from somebody that is an outsider that was not born and raised here. I want to talk to you about the things that I have learned and can save you on some culture shock here, but also why I think Houston is a great place to live, but make sure you're okay with it before you make that commitment. So let's go ahead and dive in and talk about all of the things that we need to know about moving to Houston. All right, before we begin, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and go ahead and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all things about living in the Houston area. We have videos coming out every week, and we'd love to have you subscribe to our channel. So let's go ahead and dive in. I wanted to do this video and be more casual about it and just kind of talk to you about the things that I've learned living here the last 5 years in Texas. I have lived all over. I originally come from Indiana, in a small town outside of Indianapolis. I've lived in Tennessee, Georgia, Florida. I've even lived in Venezuela for a while, Mexico. So I've lived all over, and I finally decided to pick a place and call it home. And I decided on Houston. I did a lot of research, but I only had been here on two quick short trips to visit a few friends that I had here. And I just instantly fell in love with it because of so many reasons. I knew I always wanted to live in a bigger city, but this still gives me that small town vibe, but having the big city feels as well. So I'm going to quickly go through my list, and I got it here on the screen just to make sure I got everything for you guys. But the first thing was the cost of living. When I looked at a lot of other big cities like New York, cities all throughout California, Florida, Houston just kept coming up cheaper. Your dollar does go a lot further here. And if you're looking just to move to Texas in general, Houston is definitely cheaper than Austin and Dallas, which are some more popular areas to move here. I noticed that a lot of the energy costs were kind of the lowest in the country. But however, when you're looking at price, insurances are way more here, especially when I was living in Indiana and Tennessee. My automobile insurance was way cheaper. And when I moved here, it pretty much doubled my insurance bill. So that is a con to the cost of living here, but some of the other benefits outweigh that. We do have no state income tax here. So that was a pro for me when I lived in Georgia and Indiana. I did not like that I had to pay another tax. However, because we have higher or no income, state income tax, we do have higher property taxes than most areas. And we do have higher sales tax. It's about 8%, about 8.25% here. But our food and gas prices are very low compared to other areas. And one of the best things here, I knew I was going to buy a house here. We ended up building our home here and settled in the suburb of Richmond, Texas, around Katy and Cinco Ranch area. And one thing that we noticed here was that you could get a lot more for a home here, even though it might be higher than some other small towns, especially where I grew up. But compared to a metropolitan city, Houston is one of the lowest when it comes to cost of living. If you compare it to somewhere like New York or San Francisco, those cities can be upwards to 100 to 174% higher and more expensive to live in than Houston. So when you look at homes here, even with the price that homes have gone up over the years, when we built our home about a year and a half ago, our base price of our house went up literally the next month, 70,000. And right now I know the price has gone up about 150. So property values are growing here, but they are still some of the lowers when you look at the big city. And it just depends on what side of town that you're going to live on. So the next thing that you need to know about Houston is the size. We're the fourth largest in the country based on population. And one thing to know about Texas is that Texas has 3 cities out of the top 10 for population, and the other two would be San Antonio And then Dallas, I think, is like at number 9. Other thing that's really great here about the size is we have the largest medical center in the world. People come from all over for that hospital, especially for cancer treatments. We have 2 airports here, one in the north and one in the south. And our area is seeing a lot of growth here and people moving here because of our booming job market. The industries that we have here, obviously gas and oil, but so many other places are starting to pop up here, especially for tech, that this area is growing. And 2, Houston has so many areas inside the Houston zip codes, but also so many suburbs. We saw a kind of a mass exodus over the last 2 years of people, especially when COVID hit, that they were leaving downtown and coming out this way because you were getting more for your money. What we were paying for a 2-bedroom apartment, we're now paying for a 2-story home. So you're able to get more for your money there. And, with so many areas that you can move to, there's kind of just an area for everybody, but you're still close enough to downtown. Now, there are some areas towards the north and stuff that could be 45 minutes plus from downtown, but where we're at in Richmond, Texas, we felt like it was a great area because depending on what side of Houston we're going to, we could be downtown in 25 minutes, but we can be on the west side of Houston in 15 minutes. So it all depends on what your goals and what you want to move to. And you can find that here in Houston, even as big as it is, it offers that something for everybody. And one caveat is you can pick the wrong area when you move to Houston. So, if you're looking to move here, reach out to us, let us know what you're looking for, and we'll make sure we put you in the right area. Because, there's areas based on age and lifestyles and nightlife and things like that. Better for families, for older people. So depending on what your lifestyle is and what you're needing, we can help recommend on where you should go, especially for suburbs. And especially if you're moving here for work, we can make sure that you're on the right side of town for that. So after talking about size, another thing that the size allows us is diversity in the people here. One thing that I noticed first moving here to Houston in 2017, I moved here in July, and then the following month we had Hurricane Harvey. And one thing I realized is Houstonians are just amazing people, super nice, friendly. And when they say Houston strong, they mean it. Everybody was willing to help everybody. Anytime there's a problem here, Houston's seen its fair share of hardships. I'm not going to lie, even in the 5 years I've lived here. But people really do come together. In spite of being a big metropolitan community, Houston still gives that sense of small town kind of community vibes, that small town friendliness. And no matter what your tribe is in Houston, it will not be hard for you to find your group of people that you want to hang around that think like you. And one thing about our diversity here that really shocked me was we're one of the most diverse cities in the country. And you can see that as soon as you get here. I've lived in other big cities. One thing I noticed was people were kind of, for lack of a better term, kind of not segregated, but you could go to different sides of town and kind of see, Chinatown or a Hispanic side of town. And that's great and all, but there was no just real kind of inclusion everywhere. And that's one thing I noticed about Houston. It's just diverse everywhere. You can see, just no matter what street corner you go to, you can see all types of cultures, way of life. And that's something for somebody that's traveled abroad and lived abroad, something that I really, really loved about Houston was the diversity here. And the Houston culture is just like none others. So based on size and people and diversity leads to one of the biggest cons I think about living in Houston, and that is traffic and transportation. Houston traffic is just absurd. No matter where you go in Houston, traffic is just ridiculous. Now, you can locate out to some of the suburbs and traffic is fine, but getting on the main interstates, trying to go one side of Houston to the other it could be a very frustrating thing. One day it could take you 15 minutes to get to work, and the next day it could take you 45 minutes. When I first moved here, I lived on Westheimer Road, and literally to go about a half mile to a mile down the road to just Walmart, literally sometimes could take me 15 minutes, depending, because I would have to do a U-turn to come down, and then the traffic, depending on the time of day, was just horrendous. So you definitely want to look what side of town you're going to be living on, and that you are close to where you're working or where you're going to be spending the majority of your time. And if you're somebody that comes from a big city like DC, New York, where you have really great public transportation, do not expect that from Houston. I think we have some of the worst public transportation for a big city. If you're going to move to Houston, you need reliable transportation or a car or some way to get around, because taking the public transportation could take you hours just to get a few miles down the road. So it's just one thing that we do not have here that I hope they get better. But don't come here thinking that, oh, I'll just go with public transportation. So we don't have a real metro system here, but I feel like you need a car here, because literally to go to one side to the other. So if you look at Houston, where we're at in Katy, Richmond area, you'd be like, oh, that's not that far from downtown, but literally, depending on traffic, could take you 30 minutes to an hour. So, don't be fooled by the map. Just to go a few miles in Houston could take you a while. And another thing that gets Houston a lot of attention is our weather here. And for some, it's a pro. And for people like me, sometimes it's a con. It gets really, really hot here in Houston in the summer, especially this past summer. Right now, recording this video, it's in October. This past summer was just probably the worst summer I think I've had living here in 5 years. In early June, we were in the hundreds, and that's not even the index. And the humidity here is just horrible. I've lived in Florida, Pensacola area, and the humidity there was pretty bad, but here is just like none other, and it's relentless. And you're just constantly sweating, you're constantly hot. But the pro side to that with the weather is that we can pretty much be out year round for activities. So that is really nice. And two, we do have really great winters. I do like cooler weather sometimes. I kind of like the change of seasons. You do not get that here in Houston. You get maybe 2 seasons, just really hot and a quick little break, and then we're back to hot again. I come from up north where you could see, spring, summer, fall, and winter. Especially fall is my favorite. It doesn't even remotely look like a fall that you would see up north. So if you're wanting seasons like that, this is not the place for you. But if you're like warm, hot weather, my mom loves it to come down here. She just loves hot weather. She hates being cold. But here in the winters, you're never going to freeze all winter. The winters here are a little bipolar, very unstable. So some days you might have a 50 to 70 degree, and then we might drop down in the high 20s. We did have a really bad storm about 2 years ago, and which was really bizarre for this area. But as far as winter goes, it's nothing like that. You just have kind of short-lived cold points, and then it warms up a little bit, and then it's cold again. So you do get a little bit of a break, which I thoroughly enjoy for that. So because of the decent weather we have here, it gives us more things to do year round. So one thing about Texas that kind of, or at least the Houston area, that kind of stood out to me was life in Houston is a really unique blend of like Texas traditions, but you still get that feel of a more modern city, which is what I wanted. And to me, Houston is an ideal place to live because there's something for everybody. There's always something to do. There's always some type of festival going on or activity, because the Houston is just so big, especially the greater Houston area. There's always something to do. There's tons of family activities. There's museums, the zoo. We have NASA here, and there's just something for everybody. There's great nightlife here. So if you're a younger crowd and you really like to go out on the weekends, there's a great spot for no matter what type of nightlife you're looking for. There's just great lifestyles for all ages here. And with the great weather, like I said, we can spend year round outside, nice activities. We have breweries, wineries. And one thing that I really liked about Houston, because I love to travel and I love weekend trips and quick getaways, is that Houston's really kind of perfectly located for that. From where I'm at, we're about 4 hours from San Antonio. We're about 3.5 hours from Dallas. Austin, you're about 3 hours, 2.5, 3 hours, depending where you're going in Austin. Corpus Christi, 3 hours. We're like 5 hours, depending where you're at in Houston, 5 hours from the border. And then on top of that, there's so many quick flights. We just went to El Salvador. You could go to quick flight to Mexico. I think El Salvador flight was like 2 hours and 15 minutes. Quick trips to Florida. Even Vegas is about a little over 3 hours. So you're just so many places you can go and see and do. And that's just one thing that I really liked about Houston is that the travel is great because, like I said, we have 2 airports and flights are usually relatively inexpensive flying from here, especially internationally. And then I'm saving the best topic for last, and that is the food scene. I love to eat. I love to cook. I had to move to a town that had some really diverse cuisine, and that really kind of, you didn't get bored. I've lived in other towns where you kind of just eat the same type of thing that really wasn't diverse with food. But Houston, to me, is just a legendary food scene. And to me, probably the best in the country. Anthony Bourdain called Houston a wonderland of strange and diverse. And that is so true. Houston features so many ethnic cuisines from all over the world. We have James Beard, award-winning chefs, dishes unique that you only find here in this area. We're home to Tex-Mex. And one thing that I liked about, like we talked about in other cities where everything's kind of isolated, it's not like you got to go to one side of town for really great Hispanic food, one side of town for really great Asian food. No, literally, it's on every corner here. You can find all types of cuisines, food trucks. It's just like nothing else you've ever seen. So many mom and pop places and local restaurants that you want to support. And there's just tons of international food markets too. That's one thing, like I said, I like to cook. And no matter where you're at, within 10 minutes of me, there's so many Hispanic food stores, there's Asian food markets, there's African markets. I saw an Indian grocery store. So everything's so close. No matter what type of ingredient you can find authentic ingredients imported from those countries. And it is just great. There's just no lack of food and resources here. The Houston farmers market is amazing. They bring in so many things that are imported to that market, and that's local to us as well. And to me, the grocery stores here are like none other. HEB is the best grocery store. It was rated the #1 grocery store in the country. Everybody here knows what HEB is. When we moved to Dallas, that's one reason I wanted to move back to Houston, because Dallas did not have HEB. They had their Central Market. But I really miss this grocery store because they literally have everything you can think of, especially for diversity for food, great bakeries, just great everything. So if you're really thinking about moving to the Houston area, and there's something I didn't cover, go ahead and put your questions and comments below. If there's something that you want us to research, reach out to us. Our information will be on the screen. It's in the description below. And just reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. If there's something that you want us to cover about Houston that you think would be helpful, go ahead and leave that in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video.